Traced all your shapes, you're going to go ahead and actually fill them in color. It's important that you unlock your animal layer, click on the picture, and change the opacity back to 100, because if you don't, you're going to end up pulling out pastel colors, and that's not what we want. We want the real colors from the actual animal itself. Once you have changed the opacity back to 100, you're going to lock that layer, go to your polygon layer, you're going to click on your shapes with your selection tool, do I for eyedropper and pick up the color. V for selection, select I for eyedropper. You want to keep a variety of colors next to each other. You don't want them too different, but you also don't want them to be the same because we want to show a variation. So these are two colors that are very similar, but they're also very different. The other thing that can happen is that you could have ended up forgetting to trace a shape. If that's the case, then you're going to have to go in with your pen tool and retrace those shapes and make sure that you have a shape there. So let's say I forgot to trace this shape and I went to go color these in, but then there's no shape here for me to fill in here. I would then grab my pen tool, trace the shape again, and then just go ahead and fill. What if I though forget to trace something that should be on top of another shape? So for instance, maybe I did not forget to trace this one, but I forgot to trace the outside edge of my nose. That can be a problem, because now what happens is if I go to draw the nose, I could end up covering up my nostrils. The last thing that you draw happens to be the layer that sits on the top. So here I do have a shape. It's just hard to find because there we go. Okay, I redrew this shape, but when I redrew it, it was on top of this one. I just simply right click, arrange, and send to back so that it will go behind the nostril and then it will sit there. The other thing that can happen is when you're tracing, you might have at some point when you were using your pen tool left a gap between your shapes like this. If that's the case, you can use your selection tool to pick it up and move it over and maybe transform it just a tiny bit. Or what you can do is grab your white arrow and actually pick up these anchor points and just slightly move them. They don't have to be perfect as long as they don't look too different from what you had. So that way you can fill in some of those gaps. You do not want to have any gaps. You want to have everything laid out and colored, because this is going to get turned off at this point. And you want to have no white showing in between the spaces. So that's something you're going to have to check before you turn in your project. Okay, I have turned off my grid, so view, it'll say hide grid. I have turned off my image of my animal, and this should be completely covered with color. I haven't finished, but you guys get the idea of how to get this started. Once this is all colored, you've got your animal turned off, you've turned off your grid, you're going to save as an Illustrator file to the cloud, and then you're going to go ahead and export it as a ping and turn it in on Canvas.